you some thoughts today on the topic of the day, the practice that we're engaged in, equanimity or upekkha. So I have 5 children. I think I've probably mentioned that in some previous talks, all boys. My oldest is in graduate school, and my youngest is 6. In between there, I have a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 19-year-old. So, short from young adulthood up to, really young child, I am dealing with much of the developmental lifespan and the challenges and the joys that it brings to parents. And at least 4 out of the 5 of them. One of them is studying, my second son is studying abroad right now, so I'm not really in day-to-day in the same way as I am with the others. But each one of my sons are dealing with some particular challenges of this stage of life that they're in at this particular time. There's always something intense and challenging that I seem to be juggling as a parent together with my partner at this day. One day it's this one day it's this one and that one. And I often find myself wondering, as I'm sure all good parents do, am I doing too much? Am I doing not enough? Am I overdoing what I'm doing? Am I underdoing? Do they need more? Do they need less? And the answers are not always so obvious. What I've been finding for myself, as I've been very, very conscious of equanimity and really interested in how is equanimity in my life in the ordinary moments, and in what ways can equanimity be in my life in the everyday ordinary moments. What I've been finding more and more that's been really helpful is that when I connect equanimity together with the other Brahmaviharas, and not just focusing on equanimity in and of itself as a quality of heart and mind, but with very much within the context, very much within the frame of the 4 Brahmaviharas, then it really yields some fruitful realizations. I was reminded when I was preparing this talk of the simile of the sun that I had mentioned in an earlier talk when I spoke about one of the other Brahmaviharas from Equanimity. He writes about this. He describes metta as being like the sun at midday, bright, intense, heat, right? That's the power, that's the love of metta. And he describes karuna, or compassion, as the sun as it's setting towards the end of the day. In the heart being open to the challenges and the pain and the struggles that we and others are experiencing. And mudita, or appreciative joy, as the sun as it's rising in the morning, fresh and new and bright. And the counterpart for these, I like to think these first 3 Brahmaviharas are the extroverts, and then equanimity is the introvert. Not really, but it is sort of like a counterpart to those first 3 Brahmaviharas. Because the quality of equanimity is more of a standing back kind of a quality. It's not as active and seeking in the same way that metta, karuna, and mudita are. It holds the situation with awareness without moving towards the situation itself. Just allowing it to be just so, allowing things to be just as they are. So the simile that Equanimity gives for equanimity is that of the full moon in a sky that's bright because it's empty of clouds, a cloudless night sky with a full moon. And this moon has brightness, not as bright as the sunshine, as the sunlight, but beautiful moonlight. And it also gives some warmth, but not like the sun. It's a reflection of the sunshine. And when I think of that imagery, I can appreciate that equanimity really can't exist without the context of the other three Brahmaviharas. And it goes the other way as well. Skillful and grounded, I'm going to come back to that word soon, but skillful and grounded practice of metta and karuna and mudita needs equanimity as well. Oftentimes we can imagine or associate equanimity with the quality of calm, of calmness. And it's true, the quality of calm is something that we really seek to cultivate and develop in our meditation traditions. It's a very important quality and very, very useful, very beneficial. But equanimity isn't the equivalent of calm. Equanimity is this steady quality of mind that allows us to experience things as they are without being overcome by them, particularly emotional experiences such as anger, anxiety, fear, experiences that normally really throw us off of our groundedness and threaten to overwhelm us and push us into reactivity. And so as we develop equanimity, we cultivate the capacity to be with these experiences, to hold them by being with them, and then over time learning how to release the reactivity in those experiences, not because we will no longer have these experiences, right? We can have this subtle, conscious or not so conscious aspiration sometimes as we approach these kind of practices that we want to transcend. We have this fantasy that we want to become above, immune to these troubling or uncomfortable or challenging emotional experiences, but this won't happen. And it isn't a skillful aspiration, it's an understandable one. But rather, equanimity is there for us to be able to be with these experiences and stay grounded. Meditation teacher and Dharma teacher Donald Rothberg, he says, the near neighbor of equanimity, we've talked about this, is indifference. It's easy to think sometimes, oh, I'm having equanimity, when really what's happening is some form of aversiveness, of turning away, of not wanting to be with. Well, he takes that apart even more, and he says, well, there's a lot of qualities that are not just indifference, but they're also sort of these near neighbors of equanimity, and these include denial and complacency and resignation, acquiescence, numbness, intellectual aloofness, rationalization, and cynicism, dogmatism, and fear of strong emotions, particularly fear of anger. And when I first read this list, I was like, gosh, I'm familiar with many of these experiences. These are like almost reflexive, defensive positions that we can go into as a way of protecting, not bad intentions. We're attempting to protect. And equanimity is offering us a better alternative, a way of being with experience and being defended, but not in this closed off, walled off, protected heart space that we may reflexively turn to and rely on. Lee also spoke this week about the quality of courage that's needed, and also how equanimity itself is a practice of courage. Because to develop another way of being with challenge, of being with what otherwise overwhelms or really stresses us, requires this kind of fortitude and commitment and courage. So there's this story that illustrates this sort of this grounded spaciousness of equanimity that's told over. It's an old story. I don't know the origins of it, but I've heard meditation teacher Tara Brach share this story more than once. So you may have heard the story as well. There's this farmer, and he owns a horse. And this horse is the most valuable asset that he has. And one day the horse runs away. And all his neighbors and his friends commiserate with him, and they say, oh, what a horrible thing. You have such terrible luck. What a misfortune. Now you've fallen into this poverty. You're poor now, and you have no way to pull your plow. You have no way to transport your goods. Oh, what a horrible thing. And the farmer's response is, I don't know if it's an unfortunate experience. I don't know if it's a misfortune or not. All I know is that the horse is gone. And then a few days later, the horse returns, but it brings some friends with it. It brings 6 other stallions and mares along. And now the farmer is in possession of 7 horses. And the neighbor turns to him and they say, wow, what good fortune you have, right? How lucky you are. You're no longer poor. You've got a small fortune here. And the farmer says, I don't know if it's fortunate or not. All I know is that now I have 7 horses in my stable. A few days later, the farmer's son is trying to train and break in one of these wild stallions. And then he's thrown from the horse and he breaks his leg and he breaks his shoulder. And all the neighbors turn to the farmer and they say, oh, what a terrible tragedy. What a misfortune. Now you don't have your son to help you with the harvest. Oh, this is just terrible. And the farmer says, I don't know if this is a misfortune or not. All I know is that my son has been injured. And then less than a week later, the army comes through and they conscript all the young men into service of the army, except for this farmer's son, who's not conscripted into the army because of his injuries. And perhaps in some traditions, the story goes on, right? This is like the story that potentially never ends. But it illustrates this groundedness and the spaciousness of equanimity. We don't really know what's good for us and what's not good for us. We don't really know how things will unfold and ultimately what is and what isn't in our benefit. And we know this intellectually. And yet in that moment, when we respond because of what something feels like, how it's being experienced within us, we go into, oh no, I know this is good. And I know this is bad. And I know I want that. And I know I need that. And I know I don't want that. I don't need that. Equanimity enables us to hold that experience and also hold the, I don't know. When I read the story again, I thought of the Jewish version of this story. And here's how it goes. So a husband and a wife come into the rabbi, and they're having major marital problems. And the wife starts, and she's really going off on the husband to the rabbi. He this, he never this, he always that. On and on. And the rabbi is just nodding his head and saying, you're right, you're right, you're right. And eventually she's done, and then it's the husband's turn, and he really goes off on her. She always this, she never that, I can't take this, I can't take that. And then the rabbi's nodding his head all along, listening carefully and saying, you're right, you're right. And eventually the husband's done, and then they leave. And the attendant of the rabbi turns to the rabbi and says, I don't quite get it. How can they both be right? And the rabbi nods his head and he says, you're right, you're right, you're right. So although that is a joke, really, when I listen, for example, to 2 of my sons getting into it together, I feel like that rabbi. I feel like you're right, you're right, you're right, and you're right, you're right, you're right. I get it. I hear both of you. I understand both of you. Now what? I don't know. Can I be in that space? Can I see what unfolds if I can just stay in that space? Is something really needed of me? Is something really being called of me? Maybe, maybe not. And then I saw this really beautiful teaching. It's attributed to mindfulness teachers Carolyn Jones and Paul Burrows. And they describe the 4 Brahmaviharas as 4 dimensions of love. And when I saw them describe it this way, I was like, this fits another piece for me in the practice, another important awareness, a way of approaching and relating with these practices. So metta, loving kindness, this is the love that connects. Okay, metta is the love that connects. It enables us to connect with others. It enables us to connect with ourselves. We've spoken so much about this. It's not attachment, but a caring, and a connection through that caring. And compassion is being described in their teaching as the love that responds. It's the responding love. There's something that's being called of us to tend to another, to bring caring into action. That's the love that takes that action, is the love of karuna, of compassion. And mudita is the love that celebrates. We see somebody else's good fortune, we hear from somebody who shares with us, and our heart is open to celebrating those experiences, those situations. And equanimity is the love that allows. It's the love that allows. It's not an indifferent, as we started off, it's not an indifferent, uncaring, or aversion-based experience or posture. So when I walk around and I say, okay, am I allowed? What needs to be allowed for here? Just in terms of my inner experience, not in any practical sense, just in terms of how I'm relating with this. Am I allowing? Am I in a posture of allowing? Especially when it's not what I want to do reflexively. I want to pull away from that allowing. And then I can also ask myself, and now what else is needed within that groundedness? I see one way of describing equanimity as a grounded spaciousness. Right? There's an openness, there's a spaciousness, but it's also very much grounded. So what's needed in the space of allowing? Is it a connecting? Is it a celebrating? Is it a caring, a responding? I saw this quote from author and essayist E.B. White. He says, "I wake every morning unsure whether to save the world or to savor it." I wake up every morning unsure whether to save the world or to savor it. And really, equanimity enables us to have both, and also to know when, perhaps, to have a better sense of when each one is called for, and also when not. Also when not. When to savor, when to save. Right? I don't mean save in the literal sense, but when to respond, when to take a proactive position, when to have a reaction, a response, and when not. And then when just to sit back and savor. Thank you. Thank you for your listening. So let's take a few moments and take a moment to listen in to the body, what's needed, what's called for, in order to prepare ourselves for some sitting. And what would it be like as we set up our practice and we set up the body and we set up the environment and we set up our posture? If we also set up our aspirations for this practice, just for this moment, for these moments, and we invite ourselves to work with the love that allows. I'm reminded of the quote that I've shared before with you. Allow yourself time and space to just begin to arrive within you. This practice of allowing, which paradoxically sets us up with skills in both grounding and in a spacious allowing. So settling into the posture. Taking some time to notice the body. What does it feel like in the body right now? What's the inner environment like? What's the overall energy right now in the body? Checking in with the mind. What are the kinds of thoughts? And what's the energy like in the mind as well? And what's the overall emotional state right now? Is there anything that we need that would be calling for us to allow? Just to be, just as it is. Not for any other reason other than because it's here. As we walk through this door of allowing experiences to be just as they are, We invite the quality of metta as well. Connecting, that sense of kindness and care and friendliness, a sense of tenderness. Bringing metta to the experience of allowing, of equanimity, allows for the practice to have a vitality, the heart. This isn't a removed sense of allowing, some sort of distance that provides a sense of safety for us, but we're right here, right in the thick of the experience, with our heart open, kind and caring. To whatever extent is available for us. So that when we bump into experiences, thoughts, sensations that are difficult, that are challenging, it'd be harder to bear and to simply be with. We turn towards that challenge. We respond. This is the quality of compassion. In the same way that my heart is moved to reflexively respond if my young child approaches me in pain. I just want to be present in a caring way. I want my child not to know that I care, but to feel that I care. And when we're allowing our experiences to be as they are, and we're experiencing an ease, a comfort, a comfortability, perhaps a joy, a spaciousness, The quality of mudita is present. We bring this forth to celebrate, to appreciate, to savor. It's really wholesome to savor wholesome experiences. And perhaps then it's moved on. And another moment and another experience has arisen, taken its place. Again, calling forth for the allowing. Some people have the practice of inwardly turning toward the experience that's more challenging and saying yes, yes. It's not a yes that reflects, I want this, as much as you're here and I allow for this. I recognize this. I can hold the space in and around. May we be open to accepting the comings and goings of experience. May we be open to accepting the coming and going of experience. May we be open to accepting the coming and going of experience. May we all be open, in balance, and with peace. May we all be open, with balance and in peace. May we all be open, in balance, and with peace.